and what I turned it into. Hey, what's going on? I'm Jamie Blake, and in this video, I'll be showing you some cool sound design tricks to shape the tone of a vocal sample and turn it into some beautiful sounding chords using Manipulator from Polyverse. So one of my favorite things about using my voice as an instrument and processing it with Manipulator is how unique it sounds. It's not gonna sound like a stock plugin. It's not gonna sound like something that everyone has access to. So I would encourage you to use your own voice and try some of these techniques out to get some of your signature sound palettes under your belt. Before we get into it, let's take a listen to the vocal sample that I'm starting with. So I have Manipulator turned off right now. Okay, so it's just a standard kind of pitched up vocal sample, nothing special about it. So I'm gonna briefly show you the routing inside of Ableton Live, and then let's turn on Manipulator and start having some fun. Okay, so I have a separate MIDI track up here that I've called Vox MIDI, and this has some chords on it. And to route these chords into Manipulator, I've sent this output to Vox, which is the name of this track down here with the vocal sample on it. And you can see below Vox, it says 1 Manipulator. So now I'm going to turn on Manipulator, and let's just take a listen to what it sounds like on the initial settings. So now it sounds like chords. It's a little bit grainy, it's a little bit fuzzy, but I'm going to take care of that. The first thing I'm going to do is just make some simple adjustments. So I'm going to adjust the smear a little bit. Play with the pitch. All right, so already it's got a nice bright metallic sound to it, but now I want it to evolve and change and not just be a static sound, but have some character. So one of my favorite parameters with Manipulator is this one called alternator. It's kind of a unique parameter, and it's gonna take an individual cycle of the waveform, and it's gonna split them into overlapping grains that alternate up and down by the amount of semitones that you set on the value right here. Paired with the alternator, we have this octave parameter. So I'm going to set the octave to just -1 for now. And then before I start modulating these parameters, I'm just going to take a listen to what it sounds like. I don't want it to just stay at this value. I want it to ramp to this value and evolve over time. So the first thing I'm going to add is down here in the modulation panel. I'm going to click where it says off, and I'm going to select a meta knob. And I'm going to turn this meta knob up to, let's go 50%. And then I'm going to put the alternator back down to 0, but then turn up this pink slider right here. Or I guess it's, I don't know, red or orange. I'm very colorblind. It's this slider that's the same color as the meta knob. So I turn that up to 100%, and then I'm going to take the octave and go the opposite direction. And now as I adjust the meta knob, listen to how that affects the sound. So to take this a step further, I'm going to add another modulation source. I'm going to use an ADSR envelope, but instead of sending that ADSR envelope straight to the alternator or the octave parameters, I'm going to send it to this meta knob, which is then going to simultaneously affect the alternator and octave parameters. So if I click right here and I add an ADSR envelope, you can see this little green dot shows up, and that's saying that I can use this envelope to control the meta knob, or I guess to affect the meta knob. And then this meta knob is affecting the alternator and octave parameters. So I'm going to turn this green slider all the way up, and then I'm going to hit play and just take a listen as I adjust the parameters inside the envelope. And I kind of like that with the really slow attack. So the sound comes through as it was before this envelope was affecting the meta knob, and then it slowly ramps up and starts applying that meta knob to the alternator and octave parameters. So I'm going to leave that as it is and move on to something else. So next I'm going to play around with the harmonics, FM, and ratio parameters. So maybe I'll take the harmonics down to -1, take the ratio to 0.5. And before I start modulating this, I'm just going to have a listen to what it sounds like. So now it's getting a little bit of grit to it, a little bit of bite to it. But again, maybe I don't want to have these settings just be static and I want them to evolve. So I'm going to add a sequencer and I'm going to make the shape a little more of a square shape. And I'm going to draw in just a simple pattern. So maybe I'll do like a, let's see. If you hold Command and click, it'll take the value down to 0. So not the maximum positive or the maximum negative, but it just takes it straight to 0. And then I'm going to put this rate to 2. Now I'm going to send this sequencer to the harmonics and see what that sounds like. Maybe I'll also send the sequencer to the FM parameter. Now, I'm curious what it might sound like if I also send this sequencer to the meta knob so that the ADSR envelope and the sequencer are affecting the meta knob, which is being sent to the alternator and the octave, while simultaneously the sequencer is affecting the frequency modulation and harmonics parameters. So let's take a listen to what that would sound like. All right, so I think that sounds pretty interesting. The sound is really turning into something that is more usable for me and a lot less boring than when I started. A couple final things I'm gonna do. I'm gonna widen the sound up a little bit, turn up the smooth grain slider, and then just kind of round it out and see how it sounds. Smooth grains is right here. And maybe I'll take the sequencer out of the FM parameter and I'll actually send this meta knob to the FM. Or then maybe finally I'll add one last sequencer and I'll make it really slow and just send it to the formant to add a little bit of movement that's kind of independent from these other tone shaping tools that I'm using. So I'll just add one more sequencer. Maybe I'll take it out of sync and make the rate super slow. And I'll just send this to the formant and see what it sounds like. Maybe I'll also send this sequencer to the formant. Before I check this in the context of a mix, let's really quickly turn off all the modulation and just take a listen to how this sounded and then stack everything back up and see where we ended up. All right, so I'll turn off these 3 modulation sources. This one can stay on because it's not going directly anywhere. It's just affecting the meta knob. So I'm going to hit play and then I'm going to start bringing in the different modulation sources. Got a little bit of growl in there, a little bit of grit. And that's adding this little almost sounds like a wah-wah pedal on a guitar, or something that just kind of pokes through the mix real quick. And then lastly, got the sequencer going to the formant. So I'm really happy with how this sounds. So let's bypass Manipulator, take a listen to where we started and what I turned it into. So now it's kind of this warm, digital, robotic, metallic sound that has these weird little quirks to it. It's far more interesting to me. Let's check this in the context of a mix. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope you're inspired. I hope you found something in this video that you can go and use in your own work, in your own production, and have some fun with it. Experiment with using different vocal samples. You don't need to know how to sing. You could record yourself talking and just use that. This is a fantastic plugin. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving a like, leave a comment. Let us know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. So thanks again for watching. Until next time.